Now, I have the pleasure of introducing a fierce activist who is sitting across from me, Shelby Chestnut, who is the National Organizing and Policy Strategist for the Transgender Law Center. Shelby, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hi, viewers. My name's Shelby, and as they said, I'm the National Organizing and Policy Strategist at the Transgender Law Center. And TLC is the country's largest trans-led organization working to keep transgender and gender nonconforming people alive, thriving, and fighting for liberation. We do this through organizing, policy, litigation, and leadership development. And early on in this administration taking office, TLC was clear that trans communities would face intense attack, and that business as usual wasn't going to cut it. The only way for us to make it through was to remember how trans people have always survived and resisted in moments of crisis, through community. We created a plan of resistance that relied heavily on mobilizing our community. We launched a new volunteer program to meet the increased requests for legal support. We expanded our movement building work with leadership trainings across the country. We doubled down on our community-led programs doing work on the ground like Positively Trans, which is led by an advisory board of over a dozen trans people living with HIV, and Truth, which is led by trans and gender nonconforming youth who are using media and organizing and resisting. We also scaled up our immigration work by launching the Trans Immigrant Defense Effort. Major areas of focus have been responding to anti-trans attacks on the state and federal level, including work around the Masterpiece Cake case currently before the Supreme Court, supporting the first ever trans caravan of transgender people from Central America who crossed the border seeking asylum in the US, defeating anti-trans legislation in Texas, and working with states like Montana and Alaska who are currently facing anti-trans ballot measures to prepare to mobilize their leaders. We have also seen a great deal of targeting against low-income trans communities and trans communities living with HIV and how harmful rollbacks within the CDC, HHS, and healthcare broadly will have on our communities. In 2017, we saw devastating death and violence targeting trans people, matched with a great deal of resistance and trans leaders leading the conversation and work around ensuring the women's movement is inclusive of trans women and non-binary people, and how if we are to center trans people, we must center trans women of color, immigrants, Black communities, Indigenous communities, and communities of color who are leading this work all around the country. While we continue to monitor and respond to anti-trans attacks daily from the federal government, we also see major wins when trans people are telling their stories, driving policy decisions, and at the front lines of issues impacting their lives in small and big ways. In 2018, I call on people to support the leadership of trans people. And if you aren't trans, you should push to make sure that your schools, your community, and your organization center trans voices and experiences in authentic ways, particularly trans people of color. Educate yourself by checking out initiatives like the Black LGBT Migrant Project housed at the Transgender Law Center, and learn more about the issues facing trans people beyond the surface level headlines and how folks are organizing to resist. It is extremely important that people engage in conversations around defeating anti-trans legislation, anti-immigrant legislation, HIV criminalization, and moving beyond the debate, beyond the bathroom debate being the only thing that trans people are facing discrimination. As we head into 2018 midterm elections, we must continue to educate voters on trans issues and put forward progressive candidates who will promote the rights of trans and gender nonconforming people around the country. I call on everyone to join TLC's community resistance effort, and you could check us out at transgenderlawcenter.org/volunteer. Thank you.